All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 12 of the Fantasy Timeline. I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL. I'm here with my main man, Bill at Super Dupaflex. Bill, how you feeling?
Feeling good. Getting excited for Super Bowl. It's good matchup, and hope KC wins. But I think the Niners are going to. How about you?
It's so funny because I feel the same exact way. My heart is with the Chiefs, but my head is saying that the 49ers are going to pull it out. So it should be fun. It should be interesting to see what's going on. Just to let everybody know, whether you're listening to this on the pod or if you're in with us in the live stream, uh, Bill is currently in the middle of a startup draft. So if we pull away from our regularly scheduled madness and start talking about a startup draft, you know what it is. And obviously, if we do sidetrack onto that, we will give you details as they become available. So, Bill, we're gonna start it with the news. Oh, looks like you got something.
No.
No, okay.
No.
So news. So the Chargers have said that they've moved on from Philip Rivers. So an end of an era in San Diego / LA. Uh, let's talk about the fantasy impact. What will the Chargers do at QB? Is this a time to maybe put out a trade offer for Tyrod? In your opinion?
I mean, if I do that, I'm not offering too much. Probably like a third rounder, just because I don't expect him to be the quarterback for the whole season.
Okay.
I would imagine they're going to draft someone early, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to be Easton Stick, coming off the practice squad to be, their project. So I would imagine they're going to spend, draft capital on a quarterback. So I think it's going to be very similar to like when Tyrod was playing with the Browns, and Baker came in, and he played for four games or something like that, and then Baker took over. So that's kind of my my thought on Tyrod. How about you?
Yeah, before I get into my thoughts on Tyrod, Easton Stick may be the 101 of just football names, but maybe just names in general. Great name. First time I heard it, I thought it was a joke, but
Sounds like a baseball bat.
yeah, Easton Stick. I love it. Yeah, I actually agree with you. It's funny that you said a third round pick because that's exactly what I was thinking. Would be to throw a third out there and see if someone is just looking at this draft and saying, third round pick for Tyrod Taylor, done, and just sit and see what happens. You would guess that the Chargers would take someone early. They're at number 6. They're in a very interesting grouping of teams though, with Carolina and Indianapolis. They're all grouped together. I think they're 6, 7, and 8 back to back to back, if I remember my draft order correctly. So there is a way that if teams move, if one or more of those teams move up ahead of them, they could actually be out of the Tua / Justin Herbert discussion. So yeah, that'll be interesting.
I pulled up the draft order. So
Okay.
we got the Bengals, which they're going to take a QB. Then you got the Skins, the Lions, and the Giants, which we don't think any of them are going to.
Right.
So then you have the Dolphins, Chargers, Panthers.
Dolphins, Chargers.
So that's
So
that's
5, 6,
5, 6, 7. Yep. So I imagine there's going to be a lot of action in that 2, 3, 4 area, of people trying to get up, move up. So, I think the Redskins are going to take what's his name from
Chase
Ohio
Young.
State? Yeah, Chase Young. So then you get to the Lions and the Giants, where if Herbert's going to be if he's moving up as much as some people lead us to believe he's moving up, I mean, you could end up seeing Tua and him being selected in the top 5. So,
it should be very interesting because, while I think the Chargers are in prime position to get Tua or Justin Herbert, and I know it sounds funny to say Tua, but there are some small rumblings going around now that between Justin Herbert's Senior Bowl practice performance more than game performance, he could, with pro days and private workouts and stuff, could move himself into that QB2 discussion. Obviously it is January 29th. A lot of things will be said before teams are making picks, but it's something to watch. If a team does fall in love with Justin Herbert, they have him to the facility. They like the kid. He throws well. We've seen weird things happen in the draft before, so it could be very interesting. And good news is that your Detroit Lions will probably be rewarded handsomely for that 3rd pick in the draft. So good for you and your team there, Bill.
Yeah, we'll see how they can screw that up, right?
So we go from a player moving on due to age to possibly a player moving on because he cannot keep himself out of trouble. And if you haven't figured it out, we are talking about Kareem Hunt, who was pulled over. I think he was speeding initially, and then the officers found marijuana in his car, if I believe correctly, and possibly an open container. I don't remember if I read that correctly. But, Kareem Hunt making bad decisions like Kareem Hunt is apt to do. So, I brought this up, one, because Kareem Hunt he's a name. He's on everyone's dynasty teams. He was probably on a lot of people's redraft teams last year. Someone in one of my leagues was trying to get me to pay the 110 for him, and I said, I'm not paying 110 for a guy who, I don't know where he's going to end up. He might be splitting touches with Nick Chubb in Cleveland. Another team may make an offer and snag him away. There's just a lot of uncertainty around him, and that was before he was pulled over for his traffic violation there. So if someone is sending you an offer for Kareem Hunt right now, what are you paying?
So I actually in a league. It's a league that the startup was last off season, and it was an auction, and I got him for pretty cheap, and I just felt like he has a real high upside, but of course there's the risk. And a guy just had offered me the weekend before his issue there, him getting pulled over, took place, Chris Carson for him. And
wow.
Yeah, and like the way that my team's built, I was just kind of thinking that I wanted to go for more upside than, so I wanted to roll the dice on Hunt, and that's my only share. So I was like, I think I'm going to hold on to him. Of course, however many days later, I'm like, what in the hell was I thinking? Like when you get somebody, that's whatever, a top 30, maybe even higher than that. I don't know what Carson is now, but
right.
For somebody who's had issues in the past and shows poor decision making skills. You kind of got to move those guys when their stock's up, and I wasted an opportunity with that offer. But that being said, I'm probably, I don't know. He's still got so much upside. He's such a good player, and I think I'm probably in the 203, 204 range.
Oh wow, okay.
Still, just because, like, even if he goes back to Cleveland, I mean, in the games he did play, he was on pace to score like close to 200 points. So like that's still fine. And I mean, if he does end up somehow, like, because of his upside, it's so great, and maybe somebody still takes a chance on him, and he signs a 1-year deal with somewhere that he can blow up there or whatever. Then all of a sudden this is almost becoming the Josh Gordon thing again, but at a lesser scale.
Right.
And so now I'm just hoping, but I'm probably not buying a lot of shares. But if somebody wanted to move him for like a little higher than a mid-second, I'd probably pick up another share of him.
So you would give up a mid-second to get Kareem Hunt?
Yeah, like I said, I think I would do a 204-ish, and
depending
on the team. If it's a younger team and it's something that I'm willing to take a shot on, like a lottery ticket kind of thing, I still think he's going to get you points the equivalent of a 204 pick.
Right.
It's just, so I don't think it's that big of, you're not going to lose in that acquisition, unless he just does what he does and makes another boneheaded decision.
Yeah, you are a lot braver than I am. I don't think I would give up anything earlier than a 3rd-round pick for Kareem. And at this point, I think it's just because, he not only has gotten in trouble for his domestic violence incident, or I don't even think that's considered domestic violence. I think that's just straight assault. But and now, driving around with, at least marijuana in his car, possibly an open container. It's not good decision making, and I worry that I spend 203 or 204 or 206, and first of all, I don't have Kareem Hunt for the first 4 games of the season, which I do think he will face some suspension time for this, just because of his well-publicized previous infraction. And I'm worried that week 8, something along these lines happens again, and the Browns just cut him, and no other team wants to touch him. So yeah, I mean, 301, I think, is the earliest I could even imagine trading for him. And it's, people have different opinions about this. These players that are constantly getting into trouble. What do I do with them? Do I keep them? Do I sell them? I was hands off of Tyreek Hill last offseason while he had his issues going on, and obviously, that burnt me. But the people that were on his side, and the people that thought that his suspension would be little to none, they reap rewards for taking him and trading for him and doing that kind of thing. So yeah, it's interesting. It's all about your risk aversion and what you believe about the player in general. So we'll see as Kareem Hunt kind of proceeds in his career, whether he can keep himself on the straight and narrow, or if he keeps doing the same knucklehead stuff that he's doing. So before we get to some of the stuff we've seen on the timeline, just want to remind you guys, again, Bill is doing a startup. I have friends and people on Twitter asking me about possibly joining leagues, starting leagues. and doing all that kind of fun stuff. But, you know, we're all trying to figure it out. Do we want more leagues? Do we, you know, maybe we want one, maybe we want 10. If you want a league and you're looking for an orphan, you know, Bill and I, we say go to safe leagues. You know, they have orphans, all price ranges, whether you want to spend $30 or $300. You can see the information about the team you want to buy before making a decision, so you can see if the team has 10 first round picks that are oh so valuable this time of year. You can see if the team is loaded with studs, or if it's a rebuild that you're going to have to work a couple of years to get to winning championships. But no matter what, you can see all that information before you buy the team, which is really cool. I'm on there almost every day, and it's just amazing some of the teams that are out there. So if you're thinking about buying an orphan, go to safeleaguesfantasy.com/orphans and type in the promo code timeline and get yourself one or 101 of these awesome orphans. So now that we did that, Bill, let's see what we saw on the timeline. So this first one we got here, I saw, and yeah, we talk about this all the time, and I think I know where you're going to stand on it, but no, I want to see. So this is from Dynasty Polls at the Dynasty Polls. So this is his scenario. His 2020 rookie draft has begun. You are on the clock. Just before you draft some stud, capitalized stud, with the 101, you get an offer to swap that pick with Amari Cooper. What are you doing? You need to make a decision quickly. Time is ticking. So, Bill, are you keeping the 101 and drafting, you know, Joe Burrow or DeAndre Swift, or do you let someone else in your league get the sweet pleasure of drafting one of those guys while you walk away with Amari Cooper?
I think I am. I think I'm taking the pick. I'm not a huge Amari guy. As his inconsistency drives me insane. He kind of disappears in games, and then a lot of his points are acquired in a handful. And so if it's super flex, I'm definitely taking Burrow. Now, when you get into, like, if it's a 1 QB, I'm probably taking Amari. Just because I don't feel like there's anybody that's at his level at this moment, and in a not knowing a situation, I'll probably go Amari.
All right, so interesting, because I actually thought that you were going to go Amari here. So I was wrong. I am going Amari, whether this is super flex or not. I hear the argument about inconsistency with Amari Cooper, and I get it. But I'm looking at his stat sheet here, and he went over 100 yards 4 times this season. Went over 80 yards another 5 times. So 80 or more yards 9 times this season. You know, it's not the snapshot of consistency, but Amari was dealing with some big time injuries and played all 16, which I understand can also be frustrating as a Amari Cooper owner, because if he's playing, you're probably starting him because you don't want him on your bench when he has, you know, his big blow up game like he did against the Packers, where he went 11 for 226 and a touchdown. But sometimes that gets you what you got the week after against the Jets, where he went 1 for 3 and I think was out in the first quarter. So I think injuries were the reason for his inconsistency this year and not quarterback play. So I don't know.
I mean, I agree with that, but I mean, this isn't just a this year thing. This is something that he's dealt with throughout his whole career, and there can always be excuses for it. But it's just, I mean, there's games where he just looks incredible. Then there's games where the ball doesn't go to them, and and it's either, I don't know if it's how the defense, plays him or what, but I don't feel like he's elite. Like, the elite guys are going to be, they're going to get targets every week. They're going to produce, most of the weeks. They might not get you all the touchdowns, but they're going to get 7-8 targets a week at least. And he's not necessarily doing that. And so, and that was the same thing when he was with Oakland. And so that's kind of why, that's why I would go with the quarterback in a super flex rookie draft. But you're going to run into the same thing with running backs, because those are going to be all the top draft picks in a 1 QB.
Right.
So I'm not going to necessarily be confident in, DeAndre Swift in Tampa. I don't necessarily know that they have a great line. There's those sort of things. So I still feel more comfortable taking Amari in that situation, but I'm going with the quarterback in a super flex just because of the price. You're not going to get Burrow any cheaper than you do at that moment.
Absolutely. And Bill, you are on the side that 77% of the votes were on. They took the 101, while only 23% took Amari Cooper. So again, I like looking at these polls, and I like seeing what's going on with the 101, because if you have Amari Cooper somewhere and you want that 101 and you feel more like Bill does, and you don't like the inconsistency, and you don't like the headache the week to week trying to decide if Amari Cooper is going to play and going to play well, maybe you go to the guy who has the 101 and say, hey, Amari for the 101, yes or no? And at least 1 out of every 4 times it looks like you're gonna end up with the 101. So the next question here is from, sorry, we're jumping around the show sheet a little bit. Here's a good one. Jacob Vines at jsnake_DFF. Which side do you want in a Superflex Dynasty League? Half-point PPR for running backs. Nick Foles or Mostert and Travis Homer? This is an interesting one you put on the sheet here, Bill, because I wish there was an option 3 that said neither. But since there isn't, in a super flex, I think I'm going with Nick Foles here. Yes, Mostert has been tearing it up the last 8 or so games of the season and had his big blow-up game in the NFC Championship game. But, Bill, we've talked about this in the past. I think you agree with me. The 49ers run game is just kind of who's got the hot hand right now. We've seen Matt Breida thrive in this offense. We've seen Tevin Coleman thrive in this offense. We've seen Jeffrey Wilson thrive in this offense. I'm pretty sure you and I could get signed by the 49ers tomorrow and we could go out there and run for 100 yards. It just seems like no matter who is put out there for the 49ers at the running back position, they're not only going to perform, but they're going to perform well. But the problem is that next year there could be a guy that none of us know his name right now, kind of like Raheem Mostert was last year, who could end up being the best running back on this team, and Raheem Mostert could be a memory of years past. And Travis Homer, I liked him as a late round draft pick last year, kind of as a stash and see what happens. But let's face it, whether Penny and Carson come back healthy or they sign someone in free agency, I just don't see Travis Homer getting enough touches to be fantasy relevant. So in a super flex, I guess I'll go with Nick Foles. What says you, Bill?
Yeah, I agree. I was just a little surprised with the results and of the poll being 70% for Mostert and Homer. I just feel like Mostert, we've already talked about what we felt his value was, which was around like a late second or early third.
Right.
And Homer's basically a fourth round pick, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, do I want to take a 50-50 shot of Foles starting with Jacksonville or potentially moving somewhere? I'll take that risk and hope something happens for him over those two guys. The 28-year-old running back that we don't know if he's going to get a bunch of carries with the Niners, and Mostert and Homer, who's maybe he's the backup to start, but once Penny is healthy, Homer goes back to being third or fourth, if they sign like a receiving back or keep Procise. Yeah, I think it's pretty easily Foles for me here, but it's just the poll does not represent our opinion. One of the options was even trade, which is 10%. So only 20% feel that Foles is the winning side, and you and I both do.
Yeah, and this is a situation where I'm in I'm in 116 team league with deep benches and there aren't a lot of people on the waiver wire, and we also have 5 rounds in our rookie draft. These are the type of players, your Nick Foles, where maybe you throw a third or fourth round pick at someone and see if you give up a pick that's going to end up being in the 60s for a dart throw at the quarterback position. But we're all assuming right now that Gardner Minshew is the starter, but we honestly don't know. They have a new OC in town. Jay Gruden is in there. He might watch these two guys during training camp and say, man, Nick Foles looks good. Nick Foles is our guy. Nick Foles needs to start. Or kind of in the same way that, Nick Foles got injured and Gardner became the starter. The same thing could happen in reverse. Gardner Minshew is the week 1 starter. He gets injured. Nick Foles comes in. We all know that Nick Foles is a very streaky quarterback. So if he comes in and gets hot right away, he might be a guy that ends up being the starting quarterback for the Jags throughout the rest of the season. And we also don't know if Nick Foles even plays for the Jags. If there's a late preseason Teddy Bridgewater type injury where a team is stuck because their star went down and they have nothing at the backup position that they feel comfortable using, maybe Nick Foles becomes a trade chip. He goes to a team like, let's just use the same example. Let's use Minnesota. Kirk Cousins blows his knee out late in training camp. They have a ton of weapons. They have Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Irv Smith, Kyle Rudolph, and they just need a guy who can get those guys the ball. I mean, it's a possibility. And if you're only spending a third or a fourth round pick to get Foles, even if he's nothing, even if he's on the bench all year, you probably, whatever you're getting with that pick is not going to end up in a much better state than what Nick Foles would be on your roster. So why not throw the dart on a guy you've seen do it in the league before? Just my opinion. So let's go to our next tweet that we saw. This is from another person at TJapot. Enough for D Hop. This is a Superflex PPR tight end premium. Side one is Hopkins, Deontay Johnson, and Gerald Everett. Side two is Michael Gallup, Noah Fant, the 107 and the 310. So, Bill, just quickly let me know what side you're on.
Oh, I'm Hopkins side by a mile. Like I don't even think it's close.
And the poll shows that. The poll is 87% for the Hopkins side. And the reason why I wanted to bring this tweet out is because I wanted to tweak it a little bit. So I want you to look at this same trade, except I want you to take everything off of the Hopkins side except for Hopkins himself. So Hopkins for Gallup, Fant, the 107, and the 310. And now let me know how you feel about it.
Okay, so I mean, I feel like Gallup is probably worth a I don't know, like a mid first maybe.
Okay.
Mid to late first. I feel Fant's probably the same. So you're getting 3 mid to late firsts for Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it depends. Like, I mean, if I'm loaded, I'm probably taking Hopkins just because I would rather have that guy I think is going to be an elite scorer consistently throughout the year. You know, for as much as, you know, you like Gallup, Amari's going to, you know, take away some of his ceiling. But if I'm rebuilding, I wouldn't mind that trade. You know, if somebody offers that, I have to like seriously consider that. If I have Hopkins.
And I feel the same way. I'm a big Gallup fan. It started because he was on the Cowboys, but you know, after kind of watching him play and seeing how he fits in to the Dallas offense with Amari Cooper there, having a third guy like Randall Cobb and the run game, I mean, he could be a wide receiver too, not Dallas's wide receiver too, but a wide receiver too. And if Amari doesn't get re-signed for some reason, or you know, goes down due to injury, I think he can fill in for some games as, you know, Dallas's wide receiver one and put up stats that are maybe similar to what Amari Cooper is able to do. So I like that part of it. Noah Fant and Drew Lock seem to been able to click in certain games. So I like him, especially at a position that doesn't have a lot of depth, like tight end. You know, another first round pick and then a third. Yeah, as a rebuild, I take that all day. And even if I'm not rebuilding, I have to strongly consider that trade. I mean, it was crazy that the person was adding Deontay Johnson and Gerald Everett to that. But I think if you take those guys off and you just do a Hopkins for Fant, Gallup, 107 and the 310, I think that's something you strongly have to consider if you're a Hopkins owner. So, you know, yeah, I mean, I think we agreed on both sides of this that if you are sorry, my mind just blanked out for a second, just totally lost everything I was saying.
No, it's good. Yeah, we're pretty similar in, you know, our thoughts there. I mean, it's just, you know, it just depends. Like, I think you're a little bit more. I think your fandom, and I'm not saying you're it's not a bias necessarily, but
Right.
Gallup adds some value to you for Gallup. And
Right.
like, I agree. I think he's like a good player. I just think that Amari, that like he's gonna have those for those games where Amari is absent, not necessarily even injured, but the ones where he disappears, that's when you're gonna see Gallup get his, and that's when he can hit those ceiling, weeks. The issue is just when Amari blows up and those other weeks, oftentimes Gallup goes missing because of that. So that's where my concern is. If I'm like a team who's contending, I mean, I would much rather just stick with Hopkins because I know I'm going to be getting those 8, 9, 10 targets every week, and he catches 70% of them. So but yeah, like, I mean, it's not a terrible trade. It's, but I'm pretty high on Deontay.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I think that alone just makes it so ridiculous to me, because you could almost argue that there's a scenario where Deontay Johnson could end up being very similar to Gallup. And yes. I'm not saying it will, but there is that potential upside there. And so like, yeah.
Oh,
so that's about that.
Absolutely. I mean, putting anything else on top of Hopkins in that trade scenario automatically tips it to the Hopkins side. And that's why I wanted to kind of run the scenario without the extra pieces, because I think that makes the trade a lot more even. And it's interesting because while you were talking, I was looking up Gallup's stats, and Gallup has as many 100-yard receiving games as Cooper. And his last 2 games of the season, he had 98 yards in each of those games. So he was almost at 100 2 more times. But yeah, I mean, again, you get some of that Amari Cooper inconsistency. Against the Rams, he was 1 for 6. And that's a week, if he's in your lineup, he kills you. But, week 17, of course, when most, and by the way, all of us should not be playing in a playoff game, he did go 5 for 98 with 3 touchdowns against the Redskins. So he has the ability to blow up, but he is an awful lot like Amari, where if you start him for 16 games, they're going to probably be 9 or 10 games where you're very happy with the decision you made, and then there's going to be 6 or 7 games where you're trying to figure out what you're doing with your life. So it's very interesting, but yeah, wanted to run that through with you. And obviously I think we both kind of we're similar on Hopkins' value. So we're going to jump now to Skylar Oyen. Skylar, I hope I said your last name right. At Dynasty Skylar. Below are 3 guys drafted in 2014-15 who are all within a year of age. One has finished top 10 in PPR twice. PPR points per game, I'm sorry. PPR points per game twice, with Blake Bortles and Trubisky at quarterback. The other 2 combined have never finished in the top 10. Somehow, A-Rob is going an entire round behind these guys, Amari Cooper and Stephon Diggs per DLF ADP. So let's talk about this. You're in a startup right now. You're going through this. You're looking at, who am I taking and where am I taking them? So why is it that someone who we've seen perform and put up elite numbers with, Hall of Fame quarterback Blake Bortles and Mitch Trubisky, how is he going behind guys like Amari Cooper and Stephon Diggs?
I'm not really sure. It's interesting just because there's certain, he had a couple of rough years in there, and one was the year coming back from injury and being on a new team. So, I mean, those are 2 knocks, where they kind of compound into him just becoming and plus the quarterback is garbage. And same thing the first time. Like he do like 1,400 some yards and double digit touchdowns,
Yep.
and then he kind of poo-pooed it the next year. But even poo-pooing it wasn't like horrible, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he got hurt. He tore his ACL, I believe it was. Missed the year. Then he was a free agent. The Bears signed him, and he was still coming back from the injury. So his first season wasn't elite, and I think a lot of people gave up on him. You and I were talking about this before we went live, and I said, "Man, I faded A-Rob, and that's a big mistake on my part." Um, I think we're still. I shouldn't say we, but I still think some people are fading A-Rob because of an injury plagued year and then a year to come back and fully recover from the injury. But if we look at what A Rob did last year with Mitch Trubisky, with not really a lot of other weapons until Anthony Miller came on later in the season, the run game was average with David Montgomery. Um, what he did is pretty amazing. And we don't. I think we're still discounting that because he had a couple of bad years while he was injured and recovering from an injury.
Yeah, so like I just pulled up his stats, and so his second year, he played 16 games. He had 80 catches for 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. The next year, he also played 16 games, same amount of targets, 151. He had 73 receptions for 883 yards. So he went from 17 and a half yards per reception down to 12, which is just a astronomical drop, and then 6 touchdowns. Then he got hurt the following year, so he had 1 target the whole season. Then he went to Chicago, and so there's the growing pains there between recovering from the injury and in a new offense. He had 98. Now he's back up to 154 targets. So when he's healthy and playing, you should expect him to get 9-10 targets a week.
Yep.
And he had 98 receptions for 1,147 yards. Which is pretty low based on his career for yards per reception, 11.7. So he went from 17.5 to 12.1 to 11.7. And a lot of that probably has to do with the offense and the quarterback. And, he's just so not accurate for anything beyond like an intermediate pass. So, he's kind of stuck in that predicament. But like I find that to be like a positive for A-Rob, because the only thing Trubisky can do is get better. He can't get worse. And if he gets any better, and if the offense changes to help him out, or if the tools get better, things open up for him, his confidence has to be exceptionally low at the moment. And anything to be able to help him that way, I can see things getting better. And if they don't, that means that there'll be another quarterback coming in, and then, theoretically he'll have a better quarterback throwing to him. And that's the thing, like, what happens if he actually plays with a good quarterback? Like, imagine if he, like, let's say he ends up saying, no, I'm not going to resign here because I just don't like the situation. So I'm just going to let this ride out for my contract, and then I'm going to move on. And his contract is through 2020. So
yes.
So he, at the end of the year, maybe they decide, okay, his tools, we're not going to franchise him because obviously our quarterback doesn't fit what his skill set is. So we're just going to let A-Rob go. Now all of a sudden the Lions are like, okay, Marvin Jones contract just ended. Now we have Matt Stafford throwing to Allen Robinson. And he's got Kenny Galladay on the other side. Something like that. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, what's A-Rob playing with Stafford as opposed to Bortles and Trubisky. Like, it's just he has nowhere to go but up, in my opinion. Like, long term. And
Right.
the other guys, like Amari, I don't ever see him going above where he is. Like, I mean, it's just he is who he is, and I mean, it's a very good wide receiver. But I don't ever see him getting peppered with, like, he already has a good quarterback throwing to him, and he doesn't have that room for growth that A-Rob does. And
Right.
and the same thing with Diggs. I mean, he's playing for a team with Thielen, who's signed for just as long as he is. So he's always going to have a really good wide receiver,
Yep.
fighting him for targets. And Thielen is the focus when he's playing. And Diggs just, as talented as he is, it just seems like he goes missing at times too. And if he gets any sort of knock, he's the opposite of Amari. If you see him on the injury list, you almost have to not play him.
Yep.
Because like his performances when he's on the injury list or whatever it's called, like he is bad if he's not, he got a knock. So, I mean, A-Rob, that's why I grabbed him in the startup. Like he just seems like he's so undervalued at the moment. And I got him 48th overall in a Superflex startup, which I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
And Amari went, let's see, 9th pick in the 3rd round. So that's 33rd.
33rd. Okay.
Yep. And then, but interestingly, Diggs fell. I think. Now I'm looking and I can't even find Diggs.
Uh-oh.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Diggs went in the 6th round.
6th round. Okay.
So he went 64th overall.
64.
So he went a round and a half after Allen Robinson.
And to maybe put a little bit more wind under Skylar's wings, Bill, while you were talking, I looked up what Chicago's salary cap situation is. At this point, and I know that Robinson's contract doesn't expire until the end of the season, but right now they only have $14 million in cap space. So between signing rookies and trying to either re-sign free agents or replace outgoing free agents, they don't have a lot of money to burn. And I'm assuming that whoever signs Allen Robinson next is going to have to spend a good bit of money to acquire him. And like you're saying, there are a lot of options out there. One of those options, you mentioned the Lions, who are in their own division. The Green Bay Packers, if they decide not to do anything this season as far as signing free agents or drafting wide receivers, next year they could turn around. I don't know what their cap situation is. So if you're listening to this on the pod, and you can yell at me for saying, well, the Green Bay Packers only have $7 million in cap space. I don't know. But Devontae Adams, along with Allen Robinson, and then you have Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. I mean, that could be lethal. And I know a team that does have a lot of cap room and could be looking for a wide receiver at the end of 2020, the Indianapolis Colts. Yeah. If they part ways with T.Y. Hilton due to age and injury and whatever else, and Paris Campbell isn't progressing like they think he will, you slide Allen Robinson right in there, and you have a number one again, and you have him very quickly. And I know they have cap space. They could probably spend $100 million this year and still have a ton of cap space. So, yeah, it'll be very interesting. And he's a guy that if you see him fall a little bit, you might want to snag him, because I think he'll do well this year, but his potential is just, could be unlimited depending on where he goes.
So, and I just pulled up on dynastyleaguefootball.com their trade finder. So it pulls trades from my fantasy league.
Mhm.
And here are some of the most recent trades.
Okay.
A-Rob in a second for Kenyon Drake and Devontae Parker.
What?
There is one actually A-Rob for Diggs.
Still taking A-Rob.
This A-Rob for Robert Woods and something. It doesn't say. A-Rob for a second round pick.
What?
Yeah, I mean A-Rob for a first round pick. I actually looked that one up earlier. It was the 105.
Okay.
I
I see that.
But I still think that's low in my opinion. But
I see that as low, but it's the power of the pick again. And we talk about that all the time. Power of the pick.
A-Rob for Sterling Shepard.
What?
A-Rob for Ronald Jones, Christian Kirk in a second. Which is close, I think, but that's a lot of just kind of chunk pieces. Like I think I would rather have Allen Robinson for sure, but
right.
Yeah, I'm getting into early
so
January now.
Yeah, so we've pretty much determined that Allen Robinson you can buy him at a criminal rate right now if you're so inclined, if you believe in Allen Robinson.
And you have an owner that maybe isn't aware of how effective he actually was last year.
Yeah, and this is why tools like DLF, like even Twitter, go on and take a look, because you might find out that a guy like Allen Robinson can be had for a song.
Yeah.
So we got one more and we got the time for it. So this is from Ed Roche. Hope I said your last name right. At Benchwarmer FF. What side are you taking? The maybe the mascot for the fantasy timeline, because we talk about him so much, Odell Beckham Jr., or the 103 and the 104. I'm going Odell here. Look, maybe my love for Odell has now gone too far the other way, but I listen to people who are a lot smarter than me that look at the numbers when it comes to these draft picks and what your hit rate is. And it's 50%. And I know we look at this draft class and we go, well, the 2020 draft class, there's something special. There's so much depth. There's so many good players. But if we take a trip back in time, there was a time where Laquan Treadwell was the 101. There was a time where Corey Coleman was a top 3 rookie pick. So for as much as we think we know about these players and how good they're going to be at the next level, at the end of the day, your first round hit rate is 50%. And that's just a guy who will be good for your team, not elite Odell Beckham Jr.
And who is the wide receiver for Washington? The same year as Treadwell. And now he's with Minnesota.
Josh Doctson.
Yep, Doctson was another one. And those were both of them were in the same draft, and they were both top 5 picks.
Yep.
And if you use your 03 and 04 on guys like that, those particular guys, you end up with nothing.
Right.
And we know Odell's good. And we know Odell had a core injury this whole year. And we know Odell was in the first year of a new system. All of these things work against him. And we know Odell still caught 1,000 yards, So, there's so many things that now, do I think you could get Odell for cheaper than that? I do. And so, if the option is okay, take the 103 and 104 and flip them. I think you could get a late first back with Odell for those picks. You know what I mean? So,
Yep.
like if you're looking just as value, like what you and I think, I agree. If I have to take those picks and select players, I want Odell. But do I want those picks and then I can flip them and do some stuff with those? Then I might be like the majority and want that 103, 104. Just because you don't know how long the recovery from core surgery takes. I know the only thing I have to compare it to is when Justin Verlander had that with the Tigers, and it took him almost a whole season after his core surgery to get back to where he was. But I don't know if that's just, that's so much more important for a pitcher than it is for maybe a wide receiver. But yeah, if it's like, okay, Bill, you have to use this 103, 104 to pick players. I feel like I would get more out of Odell than those two.
Yeah, and like you said, it's every league is different, because if you're in a league, we're both in a lot of leagues where people are they're trading early and often, then yeah, maybe you want the 103 and the 104 because you feel like you can turn those picks into players that have more value overall than Odell Beckham. But if you're in a league that there's not a lot of trading being done, it's a little stagnant, but maybe you stay in it because you like the guys and you guys chat and you guys talk and everything, then maybe maybe you take Odell because you're going to have that player. I was looking up his stats while you were talking. 1,035 yards, which is a good season considering he had a core muscle injury, considering he was playing with a new quarterback on a new team in a new city. 4 touchdowns. Now, you have to believe that just knowing Odell and knowing what he has done during his career, 4 touchdowns is the outlier. He's not going to have 4 touchdowns next year. Unless he gets injured, he's not going to have 4 touchdowns next year. He's going to have more. Whoa! If you're on the live stream, you just saw the banner pop up. So, we talked about Odell and we talk about a lot of things, including trades. And we are going to have the Dynasty Trade HQ guys joining us next week. Super honored. If you're listening to us, you probably know who the Dynasty Trades HQ guys are. Shane Manila, Jeremy, Michael Sipes. They're all great guys. And as Bill and I were kind of talking about the pod and bringing guests on and stuff, Bill had a really good point. A lot of our first core group of guests are going to be people that help kind of birth this show in a way. It was their help, their ideas when it came to things like equipment and audio and things like that really put us together and put us out here every Wednesday. And Bill said, it's kind of our thank you tour. And I said, Bill, that's actually a really good way to put this. We had Dynasty Outhouse on last week. He was a major player. We're going to have the Dynasty Trade HQ guys on next week. They were major players as well. And a lot of the other guests that you see coming on in the next weeks are
John Hogue, who got us as guests the first first show we were guests on. He's going to be the week after you return from the birth of your baby. And
all of those guys had a hand in getting us out here, promoting us. A lot of the guys that you see on here have pretty good followings, and they don't have really any incentive to have a couple of new guys on their show, but they do it because this community is strong, and they do it because they're
good
all
people.
yeah, they're good people, and they're all just about lifting up guys that are out here and are giving it a shot and are doing work. So yeah, one more time, if you didn't hear it the first 3 times I said it, the Dynasty Trades HQ fellas are joining us next week. I'm super excited. I know Bill is super excited. So again, if you're listening to us on the pod, if you're in here in the stream right now, start sending us those trades. We want to, and send something that's going to get Shane Manila fired up, because let's face it, we know it's pretty easy to do that. So
yeah, talk smack about the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Cowboys fan. That's easy for me, but if you guys do it too, it'll make it even better. So so that's all we got for this week's episode. We we appreciate you guys, sticking with us and listening. If you were in the live stream, thank you so much. We love seeing you guys in the stream. We love seeing the questions, comments. We really appreciate that. If you like our YouTube live stream, please remember to subscribe, click the bell so that you know when we go live. If you're listening to us on the podcast version of this episode, tell a friend. If they ask, "Hey, where can we find these guys?" We're pretty much any podcast directory that that you can think of. We're on there. And if not, tell them which one you're listening to us on. And before we bust out today, we appreciate all of the subscriptions, all of the reviews, all of the ratings. And we got one this past week. Actually, it was a couple weeks ago, from Olivia Steph Maddie, all the way from Canada. So thank you, our neighbors to the north. They said you got to listen to this podcast. Great podcast, on point discussion, and a dynasty value barometer that you want to hear. Instant subscribe and add it to the rotation, working backwards and listening to all the episodes. This doesn't sound like a new podcast. Sounds like you've been doing this for years. Please keep on keeping on. Olivia, Steph, Maddie, we appreciate it. I'm not going to lie. I love seeing this stuff. I love getting input. It's not always going to be positive, but I love the positive input. And if you guys, have suggestions, if there's things that you guys want us to do more of, do less of, hit us up. We're always on Twitter. Send us a tweet. Hit us up in the DMs. Leave us a comment. A rate, a review, and let us know what we're doing right and what we can be doing better. Because let's face it, Bill is perfect, but I am not. So I'm trying to get better every day. And all kidding aside, so is Bill. Bill's trying to get better every day too. So with that, thank you for listening, and we are out of here.
Late.